Hey, what's going on? Ryan here with Intersection Records, and today we're talking about the 50th anniversary of The Who's classic album and rock opera, if you will, Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia came out October of 73. So The Who had been together almost 10 years by this point. You know, they'd gone from being kind of a hits band early, I Can See for Miles and Miles, My Generation, and really hit their stride with 1969's Tommy, which is their first foray into the rock opera or themed albums. It was a double album. The tour performed, they performed it in its entirety. You know, Live at Leeds was another album that came out after that, really showing this showcase as one of the best live bands in the world, known for just loud shows, energetic shows, destroying their instruments. By 1971, Pete's working on a follow-up opera called Lifehouse that doesn't really work, but most of that material is then put out on Who's Next, which is probably my favorite Who album. And by 73, you know, he's not sure what he wants to do. He's a little depressed because Lifehouse didn't work. You know, Pete Townshend says the band is made up of four totally different people. You know, Roger's kind of a bruiser and a tough guy and a little bit of a fighter. Atlas was a songwriter, virtuosic bass player. You know, Keith Moon was kind of a lunatic and kind of a crazy man. And Pete says if he didn't have a drum set to play with, he probably would have wound up in jail. And of course, Pete is an intellectual thinker, writer, composer, very complicated guy. You know, around the time that Quadrophenia is out, Eric Clapton's having trouble with drugs. So he goes down to see Eric. He gets with his mates. Pete gets with Ron Wood and Stevie Winwood, and they set up a tribute concert called Concert at the Rainbow. And part of this is to try to get Eric out of his depression and back onto a stage. You know, after the concert, you know, during which the sessions for that, Pete's introduced to something called amyl nitrate, which is like a upper given to him to kind of stay up during the sessions of working on that concert by Rick Gretsch. Coming off of that, getting back to his new home at by Cleve on River Thames, he kind of gets down himself. He recalls a time when he was a late teen about being doing a gig, and after the gig, walking out underneath the pier on the ocean and seeing some kids in their parkas, he says, with water rushing around their feet, and coming off of some uppers at that night called Purple Hearts. And, you know, having this flashback, it kind of sent him into a period where he was contemplating his next move, and he wrote out what would be the story of Quadrophenia. In fact, that story is right here in the liner notes. So this is a long story, very tiny, tiny print of story of Jimmy. And Jimmy is the hero of this. Jimmy is on his moped here, motorcycle. He is a mod. He is schizophrenic. And what Pete would call quadrophenia or quadrophenic, meaning as different as the four guys in the band are, that's the personalities that Jimmy has. And Jimmy's not sure who he wants to be or who he is. Jimmy has a drug problem with these uppers himself. And he goes through this beautiful album, and we're going to talk about it track by track. It's a complicated album. You could see up there my poster of when I saw the Quadrophenia tour in 2012, right up there. I've seen the Who 3 times. I saw the 1996 Quadrophenia tour. I saw them in 2000, which was the best show I ever saw them, which was just a great hits. Entwistle was still alive. And then seeing them in 2012, I knew the material a little bit better than I did in 96. You know, again, Pete tells the story of a kid that's a mod who a mod was a fashion statement in the early 60s. Jimmy is in a gang. Jimmy has behavioral problems and mental illness, and he's not sure who he wants to be. He sees... So this song starts off with ambient noise. It's the only Who album that has ambient noise, and you could hear the ocean. You can hear birds chirping. I am the sea. And you hear the themes of what would end up being the 4 parts of Jimmy's personality. One is a tough guy, a helpless dancer. That's supposed to be Roger Daltrey. The second is a romantic. It is me for a moment. That's supposed to be John Entwistle. A bloody lunatic, I'll even carry your bags, is supposed to be Keith Moon. And then last, a beggar, a hypocrite, Love Rain on Me, which is Pete Townshend. Again, so the opening track starts off with I Am the Sea, and they hit on the 4 themes of what would be the record. And then you launch directly into the real me. I've been to the doctor. And it really describes some of the mental illness. It's one of the best rockers on this album. And it was their single off the record when it came out in October of 73. The next song is, and this is a double album. The next song is Quadrophenia. And then Cut My Hair, which then leads us right into the last song on the first album, A Punk Meets the Godfather. It's supposed to talk about the story of Jimmy meeting his idols. The mod's favorite band was The Who, and he ends up going and idolizing The Who, and finally meets the guys and decides that, you know, it's the whole story of meeting your heroes. Maybe we don't want to meet our heroes. And I think Pete's questioning that too. You know, he's at a transition part in his career. He's already done it all. You know, done Tommy, toured Tommy, did the Isle of Wight, did Who's Next, did Live at Leeds. You know, his best friends are rock stars himself, and maybe he's now questioning his own sanity. Maybe he's questioning, you know, his bandmates and whether he wants to do this anymore. You know, it says in here, you know, this album, Quadrophenia in its entirety by Pete Townshend, 1973. Quadrophenia in its entirety. So he wrote everything on this record. He's propping these guys up a little bit, and coming to album sessions, you know, after coming up with the story, he comes to the sessions with demos of every track already done. You know, they ended up obviously cutting it. Roger did all his parts. You know, Pete's the producer basically here, but Roger produces his own vocal tracks. Jimmy's disillusioned after seeing the band, going backstage, meeting his heroes, and realizes that maybe he doesn't want to be those guys. He's still searching for himself. And again, Pete's searching for himself, isn't he? I'm One is the next song. Just an incredible song. The Dirty Jobs and Helpless Dancer are next. Helpless Dancer, again, is the theme for Roger. It's in my head, and I've had enough. Finish off the first album itself. You know, again, he knows that this battle that he has, you know, he ends up... This album came with a picture book, and I don't have that, and I wish I did. That's the back of it. And the picture book is supposed to describe the story. You know, he has this motorcycle that he ends up crashing. He, you know, there was a gang leader named Ace Face that we're going to get to in a minute, that he, again, similar to how he reveres this band and he reveres all these things that he's trying to be, you know, trying to be a leader, trying to have friends, trying to be a rock star. This side 3 opens up with 5:15, which I think is about a train, and it's about a train ride where Jimmy's trying to go back to the Brighton and go back to the beach and go back to the sea and try to find himself again. And when he gets there, he discovers that the season's over and nobody's left at the beach, and all he has is the water, and the waves. The waves hit the, you know, the waves are kissed by the sea, you know. Sea and Sand is next, and then Drowned. You know, he has an epiphany, you know, while looking and listening to the sea. When he comes back up off the beach, he gets to the hotel and he sees his old friend who was the leader of the mod gang when he was younger. And now that guy is the bellboy at the hotel. And he tries to tell him, "Oh, Jimmy, I got this great, you know, I get paid to do this." And Jimmy realizes that his idol is now just kind of a baggage handler. That part's played and was sung by Keith Moon. You know, again, disillusioned with having idols, having false idols. You know, having, you know, making gods out of people that are just ordinary people. And maybe that's what Pete's struggling with himself. Dr. Jimmy's next. You know, another shrink that Jimmy sees. And then you get to the rock. And that rock is out there in the ocean that he's trying to get out to. And almost dies getting out there. But what he realizes is this whole journey that he's been on is about finding himself. And he is a confused young man. And he may be suffering from schizophrenia. But what he really is struggling to do is find himself. And that's why at the end, when Roger sings that beautiful song, "Love Rain on Me," which is just iconic, he realizes that everything he's been searching for was really inside him the whole time. You know, this is just a fantastic double album. It's probably, as time has gone, my favorite. I mean, Who's Next is so great just as a rock record. This thing has so much weight to it in the sense that it just, there's a lot of meaning. And really, they would never do another great album like this, in my opinion. This is the pinnacle. And when you have albums like that 3-album run, if you want to call it 4 albums with the live album, you know, it's all you kind of need to do. And they did it, and Pete did it. 50 years gone, and 50 years on since Quadrophenia. It remains a masterwork. Check out my channel. We do shows every single day. Peace out.